It was a morning of August 10th, 2010, around 7:30 a.m., when the Hulimav police station in Bengaluru received a call. The station in charge, the inspector, picked it up. The voice on the other end delivered shocking news. A murder had taken place in an apartment in Hulimavu. Hulimavu was an upscale area where crimes like this were uncommon, so this news startled the police. Without wasting a moment, a team rushed to the location. As they entered the apartment, they were met with a horrifying sight. A woman was tied to a chair, her hands tightly bound with ropes. Deep cuts marked her neck, made by a sharp weapon. She sat motionless, her body cold and lifeless. She had been brutally murdered. The police immediately began their investigation. They examined the crime scene, took photographs, and sent the body for a postmortem. The apartment had only 2 residents, which made identifying prime suspect easier. Priyanka's husband, Satish Kumar. Satish was a manager at Innocence, a successful software engineer. His wife, Priyanka, worked as a teacher in a private school. Naturally, the police started their questioning with Satish. He was in deep shock, crying uncontrollably. They had been married for just 3 years, and now his wife was gone forever. When the police asked where he was that morning, Satish explained that he woke up at 5:30 a.m. every day and went for a jog. On August 10th, while he was jogging, he suddenly received a call from Priyanka. Her voice sounded anxious. She told him that 2 men had come to their door, claiming to be newspaper collectors. They said they wanted to buy old newspapers and scrap materials. Priyanka told them she had nothing to sell, but they wouldn't leave. They kept insisting, "Madam, just give us something." Satish felt uneasy. Scrap dealers never came this early, especially before 6 a.m. Something didn't seem right. Without wasting time, he firmly told her, "Don't open the door. I'm coming right now. Just stay where you are." He ended the call and rushed back home. When Satish reached the apartment, he saw that the door was locked from the outside. He rang the doorbell repeatedly, but there was no response. He called out for Priyanka and even tried calling her phone, but she didn't answer. Minutes passed, and soon neighbors gathered outside. This apartment had 2 keys. Satish often worked late at the office, so he kept a spare key in his desk drawer. When there was still no response and time was running out, Satish decided to go to his office to get the spare key. His office was nearby, which was one of the main reasons he had chosen this flat. Wearing his jogging clothes, he ran to his office, grabbed the key from his drawer, and rushed back home. But the moment he unlocked the door, his heart froze. His wife was sitting on a chair, lifeless. Her hands were tied tightly, and her throat had been slit. The terrifying sight left him trembling. The first thing he did was call the police. He provided his full statement, and the officers quickly resumed their investigation. Days passed, but there was no trace of the killer. No clues, no witnesses. None of the neighbors had seen anything, and there were no CCTV cameras nearby to provide any evidence. The Bengaluru police, especially the Hulimav department, were completely lost. There were no leads on who the murder was or why the crime had been committed. The police were under immense pressure. Some of Satish's friends came to console him, while others were outraged. They questioned how such a crime could happen in Bengaluru. Was law and order failing? The frustration grew, not just among Satish's friends, but also among the people in society where Priyanka had lived. By the 3rd day, with no suspect and no progress, Satish started visiting the police station daily. That day, he decided to protest outside. Sitting there, he demanded justice. 3 days have passed, and the police still haven't caught my wife's killer. They don't even know why she was murdered. What kind of police force is this? A grieving husband, a respected employee of a major company like Infosys, sitting outside a police station pleading for justice. This caught the media's attention. Local newspapers began reporting the case, and soon the Bengaluru police faced intense criticism. How could such a crucial case remain unsolved? Why was the investigation failing? For the next 3 days, Satish refused to stop his protest. The police tried to assure him that they were on the right track, but he remained firm in his demand for justice. On the 4th day, the police approached Satish again, asking him to end the protest, but he refused. Suddenly, The officers grabbed his hands. He was stunned and confused as they led him inside the police station. "Why are you treating me like this?" he asked in shock. The officer looked him in the eye and said, "For 3 days, you sat outside protesting, blaming us, thinking we were under pressure. But the truth is, you were the one fooled. While you were shouting outside, we were silently digging into your past." He paused for a moment before continuing. "From the very beginning, we suspected you. We just needed time to connect the missing pieces. And now, after 4 days, we have everything we need." The officer leaned closer and said coldly, "You spent 4 days acting like a victim. But now, everything was clear. The truth had come to light. Satish was Priyanka's murderer." Satish stood frozen for a moment, his face turning pale. Then he stammered, "W, what are you saying? Why would I kill my own wife? And if I had, why would I protest and push you to catch the killer? I could have just stayed home, stayed silent, and you wouldn't have even looked deeper into the case. So why would I do this?" The officer smirked and leaned forward. "That's exactly what we wondered too." Then, one by one, they started exposing the loopholes in his story. Satish was no professional criminal. So, under pressure, he broke down and confessed. He admitted to killing Priyanka and revealed everything. But how did the police figure out that he was a murderer? After all, Satish was the one leading a protest against them. Yet they still suspected him the most. The most thrilling part of this case is how the police uncovered the truth. But before that, let's understand why and how Satish killed his wife in such a cruel manner. The story behind the murder. Satish married Priyanka in 2007. He was born and raised in Bengaluru, and his parents were searching for a suitable match for him. By chance, Priyanka, originally from Uttar Pradesh, had moved to Bengaluru after securing a teaching job at DPS school. She was well educated and had a stable career. Satish's family liked her a lot. They introduced her to him, and he also found her to be a good match. With the approval of both families, they got married in 2007. But after marriage, everything changed. Now, the only version of events we have is Satish's, as Priyanka is no longer alive to tell her side of the story. According to Satish's statement to the police, the reason behind the murder was deeply personal. Since childhood, Satish always wore a locket around his neck. Inside, it held 2 small photos, one of his mother and one of his father. After marriage, Priyanka noticed the locket for the first time. When she saw the photos inside, she made a remark that later became a major turning point in their relationship. She told him, "Take out your parents' pictures and keep only mine in the locket." That was the first issue between them. Then Priyanka said they should move out and live separately from his parents. Satish didn't want to leave, but when his parents saw that their daughter-in-law wanted this, they agreed and told him, "If she wants to live separately, then go." So Satish moved out and started living away from his parents. But even after that, the fights didn't stop. Whenever Satish visited his parents, Priyanka didn't like it. This led to constant arguments between them. Meanwhile, Priyanka remained in regular contact with her own parents. Every time she spoke to them, Satish watched and felt a deep sense of guilt. He realized that while Priyanka could talk to her parents every day and stay close to them, he had distanced himself from his own parents because of her. This guilt kept growing. He felt he should have never left them. Even with all the arguments and resentment, they continued living together. The final straw. Then, in July 2010, Satish bought a piece of land to build a house. After purchasing it, he planned a Bhumi Pujan, a Hindu ritual seeking blessings from Mother Earth before starting construction for success and safety. The ceremony was set for the first week of August. Everything was ready, and the preparations were complete. On the day of the Bhumi Pujan, Priyanka's parents came from Uttar Pradesh to attend. Satish was busy with the rituals when, suddenly, his own parents arrived at the ceremony. Priyanka was there too. The moment she saw them, she sent them back. She told them, "This land belongs to my husband and me. We bought it with our own money. You have nothing to do with it, so you should stay away from the ceremony." Hearing these words from their daughter-in-law, Satish's parents quietly left. That same day, by chance, Satish found out what had happened. The moment he learned about it, he made a decision. He was going to take revenge on Priyanka. He was going to kill her. From that moment on, he started planning everything. The plan was simple. Kill Priyanka and make it look like a robbery. The perfect disguise. It was the first week of August, just a few days after the Bhumi Pujan. But Satish acted as if nothing had happened. He pretended to be normal. Priyanka, on the other hand, was overjoyed after the ceremony, completely unaware of what was coming. A few days later, Satish brought home a big painting, a massive portrait of Priyanka. Late at night, while she was fast asleep, he quietly hung it on the wall. The next morning, he woke her up earlier than usual. He knew she had to leave for school, but before that, he had planned a surprise. He smiled and said, "I have a special gift for you, but I need to blindfold you first." Priyanka, excited and happy, agreed. She thought, "Our Bhumi Pujan is done. Soon we will have our own house. And now, my husband has planned a surprise for me. What could be better?" Satish gently covered her eyes and led her to the room where he had hung the painting. Then, slowly, he removed the blindfold. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw it, a massive portrait of herself hanging on the wall. For a moment, she was overwhelmed with happiness. She thought, "My husband loves me so much. He got such a beautiful painting made just for me and placed it in our home." That evening, she even told her parents how lucky she was. She said that Satish was really good to her, that he had gifted her a portrait, and that she felt truly happy. She also believed that maybe he didn't know about the land ceremony or the argument with her parents. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of something far more sinister. But this was just the beginning. That same day, while Priyanka was feeling joyful, Satish looked at her and said, "Next week, you'll get an even bigger surprise. Be ready on August 10th. At 5:30 a.m., instead of heading out for his regular jog, he woke her up. "I have a special gift for you," he said. Excited, she followed him. He seated her in front of the painting and said, "You will know what it is when you touch it." Thinking it might be a diamond necklace, she smiled. He shook his head. "You might cheat," he teased, laughing. She giggled and said, "Then tie my hands." Satish, already prepared, bound her wrists to the chair. "Now, I'll blindfold you," he whispered. She smiled, completely unaware of what was coming. As he covered her eyes, he silently picked up a rope and slipped it around her neck. With her hands tied, she had no idea what was really happening. As the rope tightened, she smiled and said, "I know. This time, it's really a necklace." But before she could finish her sentence, the rope constricted, squeezing the life out of her. She struggled for a few moments, but within seconds, her movement ceased. Priyanka was gone. However, Satish wasn't sure if she was unconscious or dead. To confirm, he loosened the knot, took out a knife, and slit her throat, leaving no room for doubt. Some reports suggest that Priyanka's parents had a different version of why she wasn't getting along with her in-laws. I'll share that at the end of the story. But first, let's uncover how the police handled this perplexing and high-pressure case in just a few days. On the morning of August 10th, around 5:45 a.m., Satish left home for his morning jog. He returned at 6:04 a.m. During that time, he received a call from Priyanka about a scrap dealer arriving. Satish claimed he told her, "Don't open the door, I'm coming." But when the police examined their call records, they discovered the call took place at 5:55 a.m. Instead of hurrying home, Satish took 45 minutes to return, even though his jogging spot was just a short distance away. This raised suspicion. Satish explained that when he reached home, the door was locked. He knocked, rang the bell, and even called Priyanka, but she didn't respond. So, he said he went to his office to get a spare key. However, when the police checked CCTV footage and questioned office staff, they found that Satish never entered the office. He only stood outside for a while before leaving. Satish had claimed he went inside, took the key from his drawer, and returned home, but his access card was never used. There was no record of him entering. So how did he get the key? After supposedly retrieving the key, he returned home, unlocked the door, and entered around 7:30 a.m. He then called the police. When authorities arrived, he was the only person inside. Neighbors only became aware of the incident when the police showed up. They stated they hadn't heard anything unusual that morning. If a scrap dealer had truly arrived, he would have knocked on every door from the ground floor up. But strangely, he went directly to Sadish's second-floor apartment. When police checked the location records of Priyanka and Sadish's phones, they found both were within the same tower range. This suggested Priyanka had called Sadish while he was still inside the house. But if he was already home, why would she call him about the scrap dealer? These inconsistencies made the police even more suspicious of Sadish. From the beginning, he was under their scrutiny, and now the evidence against him was piling up. There were no signs of forced entry into the house. The autopsy report revealed that Priyanka was first strangled with a rope before her throat was slashed. If robbers had attacked her and she had resisted, there would have been bruises all over her body, but there weren't. Another odd detail was that valuables worth 17.5 Indian rupees lakh, $221,000, were missing. But when police searched Sadish's house, they easily found 10 Indian rupees lakh, $112,000, in cash. Additionally, when Priyanka's body was taken to hospital, she was still wearing her gold earrings, ring, and Mangal Sutra. If thieves had truly looted the house, why would they leave behind her jewelry and part cash? All clues pointed directly at Sadish. The police confronted him with the evidence. Sadish was no experienced criminal. Under intense questioning, he broke down and confessed. He admitted that he had murdered Priyanka. The police had meticulously gathered all the proof. They compiled the necessary documentation and officially filed charges against him. Finally, on July 28, 2017, the Karaga Sessions Court delivered its verdict. Sadish was sentenced to life imprisonment. Later, Priyanka's parents spoke to the media and presented a different perspective. They claimed that because Priyanka and Sadish had no children, her in-laws mistreated her. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law constantly harassed her, scolding her over trivial matters. Priyanka had repeatedly confided in her parents about this mistreatment, but Sadish never defended her. Instead, he remained silent and sometimes even sided with his parents. This was the real reason Priyanka resented her in-laws